It wasn't the howl that froze my blood. It was the way it ended. Not with a fading cry, but with the sound of something very, very large picking up its pace. And it was coming straight for me. Welcome to Nightbound Bloodline, a sanctuary for those who understand that the shadows hold more than just darkness. Tonight, we delve into the primal fear that has haunted humanity for centuries. The fear of the beast within, the monster without. We present 5 true accounts of the lycanthrope. Our first story comes from a man who trusted the solid ground beneath his feet and the logic in his own mind. What he found in the high desert of New Mexico shattered that trust forever. He calls his account, "The Claw Marks on the Tank." The email we received was succinct, its tone still carrying the sharp edge of trauma. The witness, a geologist named David, included scanned copies of his field notes from that week and a single, grainy photograph. He is a man of science, a man who deals in the ancient, non-living history of the earth. What he encountered was terrifyingly, aggressively alive. He insists, as we do, that his story is a warning. Listen closely. Story 1. The Claw Marks on the Tank. My name is David. At the time, I was 42 years old. I've been a field geologist for nearly 20 years. My job is to read the stories written in stone. I deal in facts, in epochs and eras, in strata and sediment. I don't believe in ghost stories, and I certainly never believed in werewolves. To me, they were campfire tales for people who didn't understand the natural world. I understand it, or at least I thought I did. This was last October, out near the Chusca Mountains in northwestern New Mexico. I was on a 2-week solo survey, living out of my outfitted truck. It's a lonely job, but I love the solitude. The silence of the desert is profound, or it usually is. The first night, I heard the coyotes. Their yips and howls echoed through the mesas, a classic desert soundtrack. But on the second night, something was off. The coyotes went silent around midnight. Not a gradual quieting, but an abrupt, dead stop, like a record needle being lifted. And then, a new sound took its place. A single, long howl. It was lower than any coyote, richer, and it held a note that was wrong. It wasn't a communication. It was a declaration, a claim. The hair on my arms stood up. I remember laughing at myself, a nervous little chuckle. Just a big coyote, I said out loud, or a lone wolf passing through. But the logic felt thin, even to me. The next day, I found the tracks, not near my camp, but about a mile out, near a dry wash. They were massive, 5-toed, like a man's hand, but elongated, with deep punctures at the tips from claws that must have been inches long. The stride was enormous. I took photos with my rock hammer for scale. My scientific mind tried to rationalize it, a deformed bear print, maybe? But the proportions were all wrong. The central pad was too narrow, the toes too splayed. It walked on 2 legs. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I packed up my gear and went back to the truck early. That night, I decided to sleep in the truck cab, not the rooftop tent. I told myself it was because of the wind. I was lying. I was scared, deep in my bones, primal scared. The silence was back, heavier than before. It was the kind of silence that feels like a physical pressure on your eardrums. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate thumps on the hard-packed earth. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They circled the truck. I could hear its breathing, a wet, rasping pant, like a dog, but deeper, with a phlegmy rattle in its chest. I froze. I didn't dare look. I just sat there in the driver's seat, curled into a ball, praying it would go away. And then, it scratched the truck. Not a casual scrape. A long, slow, deliberate drag of something sharp and immensely strong down the side of the vehicle. The sound was a screech of tortured metal that seemed to go right through my teeth. I squeezed my eyes shut. I don't know how long it stayed. It felt like hours. Eventually, the footsteps receded and the desert silence returned, now more terrifying than any sound. The next morning, in the harsh, honest light of day, I saw the damage. 4 parallel grooves, each about a quarter-inch deep, were carved into the reinforced metal panel of the truck bed just below the window. They started at about 7 feet high and dragged down for 4 feet. I reached out and traced them with my fingers. The metal was cold and rough. This was no bear, no mountain lion. This was something that shouldn't exist. I didn't even pack my camp properly. I just threw everything in the back and got the hell out of there. I drove for 12 hours straight. I never went back for the equipment I left at the survey site. I quit that job a month later. I still have the photos of the tracks. And I have the truck. I can't bring myself to get the bodywork fixed. Those claw marks, they're a receipt. Proof that I paid a price for a glimpse into a world I was never meant to see. I know what I heard. I know what I saw. And I know, with a certainty that keeps me up at night, that it was real. A man of logic and fact, forever marked by an encounter with the illogical. Those claw marks, a permanent scar on his vehicle and his psyche, serve as a chilling reminder that the wild places still hold their secrets close. Our next story takes us from the arid deserts to the deep, snow-blanketed woods of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, a place where the winter silence is broken only by the wind, and sometimes by something else. A story we've titled, The Thing in the Blizzard. The temperature was 30 below zero. I was lost, my truck was dead, and the snow was falling so thick I could barely see my own hands. That's when I saw it. A hulking, black shape moving against the white, a pair of eyes burning like embers in the dark. It wasn't the cold that was going to kill me. Story 2, The Thing in the Blizzard. Our second account comes from a woman named Anya, a long-haul trucker with over 1 million accident-free miles. Her world is one of CB radios, diesel fuel, and strict deadlines. She is pragmatic, tough, and unshakable. Or she was, until one Christmas Eve, on a remote stretch of highway known as the Senni Stretch, when nature's fury unveiled a predator that walked within it. Name's Anya. I've been driving an 18-wheeler for 15 years. You see a lot of weird stuff on the road, but you learn to explain it all away. Tricks of the light, sleep deprivation, deer. I was hauling a load of freight from Sault Ste. Marie down to Grayling, taking M28 through the UP. It was Christmas Eve. I wanted to make time, get home to my dog. The weather report said snow, but hell, it's Michigan in December. It always says snow. The snow started light, but by the time I hit the Senni Stretch, it was a full-blown whiteout. I'm talking zero visibility. I was crawling along at maybe 10 miles an hour, my high beams just reflecting back into my face, a wall of white. Then a thump, not a big one. Felt like I'd hit a patch of slush. But the engine coughed, sputtered, and just died. Total electrical failure. No lights, no heat, no radio. Just the sound of the wind screaming like a banshee outside. I had my cell, but no signal. Nothing. I was a sitting duck. I knew the rules, stay with the vehicle. So I hunkered down, wrapped myself in every blanket I had, and tried to wait it out. The cold started seeping in. It's a cold that doesn't just chill you, it hurts. It feels predatory. That's when I heard the first sound that wasn't the wind. A thud against the side of the trailer. A heavy, solid impact. I froze, thinking a snowplow had maybe clipped me, but there were no lights. Then another thud, closer to the cab this time. And another, and I realized it was footsteps. Something was walking alongside my truck. Something big, heavy. I could hear its breath, a deep, rumbling snort over the wind. I dared to peek through the frost-rimmed passenger window, and I saw it. A shape, darker than the night itself, standing upright in the swirling snow. It was easily 8 feet tall, built like a nightmare of a man and a wolf. Its fur was matted with ice, and its eyes, God, its eyes, they weren't reflective like an animal's. They glowed from within, a sickly, intelligent yellow. It tilted its head, and I saw this long, wolf-like muzzle open, and it let out this chattering scream. It wasn't a howl. It was a sound of pure malice, a promise. It knew I was in here. It was playing with its food. It started circling, pounding a fist on the hood. The metal dented. I was sobbing, praying, my breath coming in frozen clouds. I was sure I was dead. But then, in the distance, I saw a faint, bobbing light. Headlights. Another truck. The creature saw it too. It let out a low growl that vibrated through the cab, gave me one last, burning look with those hellish eyes, and then it just vanished into the white. 1 second it was there, the next gone. The other trucker, a guy named Earl, got my rig jumped. I was shaking so bad I could barely speak. I just babbled about a bear, a big bear. He didn't believe me. He kept looking at the deep, paw-like dent on my hood, his face pale. I drove with him all the way to Grayling, my knuckles white on the wheel the entire time. I still drive. It's my livelihood, but I will never, ever take a load through the U.P. in the winter again. I have nightmares about those eyes. You hear about people freezing to death out there, and you think, what a shame. Now I wonder, how many of them just gave up? And how many of them had a visitor in the storm first? I saw what I saw, and I know, with every mile I log, that there are things in this world that don't follow any rules I understand. A predator that used the storm itself as its hunting ground. Anya's account chills us not just for the creature's terrifying appearance, but for its calculated, intelligent stalking. It wasn't just a beast. It was a hunter, and she was its prey. Our third story leaves the desolate highways for the dense, ancient woodlands of the Appalachian foothills, a place where the trees themselves seem to watch you, and the local legends speak of a creature that is neither wolf nor man, but something infinitely older. The story is called The Braying Beast of Black Mountain. The old-timers in the holler had a name for it, the Braying Beast. We thought it was just a story to scare kids from wandering too far. But up there, in the dark of Black Mountain, I heard it answer my call. And it was much, much closer than I ever imagined. Story 3, The Braying Beast of Black Mountain. This next account was sent to us by a man named Eli, a third-generation hunter from Kentucky. He knows the Appalachian woods like the back of his hand. He can track a deer by a bent blade of grass and call in a turkey with nothing but a leaf. He is a part of that land. But on a hunting trip last November, he encountered something that made him feel like a stranger in his own home. A creature that defied every law of the woods he held sacred. I'm Eli. Been hunting these hills since I could walk. My daddy taught me, and his daddy taught him. We respect the woods. We know the sounds, the bobcat scream, the fox's bark, the owl's hoot. There ain't nothing in these trees that can surprise me. Or so I thought. I was up on Black Mountain, deep in a hollow where the cell service dies and the sunlight gets thin. I was after a big buck I'd been tracking for days. I'd set up in my stand before first light. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. Normally, you hear the squirrels chattering, the birds waking up. This was a dead silence. It was like the whole forest was holding its breath. Then the smell hit me. Lord, the smell. Like wet dog, but mixed with something rotten. Like a gut pile left in the sun for a week. It was so thick I could taste it in the back of my throat. My skin started to crawl. Something was wrong. I raised my rifle, just scanning the tree line. That's when I saw the game trail below my stand. All the saplings along one side. They were broken. Not chewed, not knocked over by a running deer. They were snapped in half about 6 feet up, like something massive and tall had just walked through and pushed them aside like curtain rods. I've never been superstitious. I laughed at the stories about the braying beast. It was a folk tale. But standing there, smelling that stink and seeing those broken trees, that old story didn't seem so funny anymore. I decided to test it. Sounds foolish, I know. I put my grunt call to my lips and let out a low, challenge grunt. A buck grunt. The silence that followed was heavier than before. And then, it answered. It wasn't far. Maybe 50 yards, just behind a thicket of rhododendron. And it was moving. Fast. I could hear the crunch, crunch, crunch of its footsteps, too heavy and too spaced for a deer, too rhythmic for a bear. It was coming straight for my tree. I raised my rifle, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would bruise. And then it stepped into a small clearing, and I saw it. Clear as I see you in my memories. It was standing on two legs, taller than any man. It was covered in shaggy, gray-brown fur, but its face, it was elongated, like a wolf, but the eyes were too high up, too intelligent. They held a mean, cunning light, and its mouth was open, panting, and I saw teeth that were yellow and thick, meant for tearing. It tilted its head back and let out that god-awful braying howl again, a sound that felt like it was scraping the inside of my skull. It knew I was in the tree. It looked right up at me. It didn't look curious. It looked hungry. It took a step towards my tree, and I saw its hands. They were more like paws, but with long, black, twisted fingers that ended in claws. It wrapped one of those hands around the trunk of my oak tree and shook it. I'm not talking a little shake. I'm talking a violent, jarring shudder that nearly threw me from my stand. I screamed. I just opened my mouth and screamed like a child. And it stopped. It looked at me, and I swear it smiled. A cruel, knowing twist of that monstrous muzzle. Then it dropped to all fours, and I saw the true power of it. The muscles in its shoulders and haunches bunched, and it moved into the trees with a speed that wasn't natural. It was a blur, a shadow, and then it was gone. The woods were silent again. I sat in that stand, clutching my rifle, for 3 hours. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. When I finally found the courage to climb down, my legs gave out. I had to crawl for a bit. I left my stand there. I never went back for it. I told my family I got spooked by a bear. They believed me, but they saw the look in my eyes. They knew it was more. I still hunt, but I stick to the edges now, the open fields. I don't go into the deep woods anymore. That thing, it took that from me. It took the peace I used to find there. My granddaddy used to say the old woods have old secrets. I believe him now. I believe every word. That beast is real, and it's still up there. A hunter, master of his domain, dethroned by a creature that should not be. Eli's story taps into the oldest fears of these ancient mountains, where folklore and reality bleed together into a terrifying truth. Our fourth story transports us across the ocean to the misty, rain-sodden forests of the Olympic Peninsula, a place of towering firs and a silence so deep it feels primordial. A place where a simple camping trip became a 48-hour siege against a creature whose intelligence was as terrifying as its form. This is the siege at Solduc Falls. It wasn't trying to get in. It was trying to tip the car over. For 2 nights, it stalked us, hunted us, and systematically tested our metal shell. We were no longer campers. We were prey in a tin can, and it was patiently trying to open us. Story 4. The Siege at Solduc Falls. This account was sent to us by a couple, Mark and Chloe. They are both paramedics from Seattle, people trained to handle crisis, to remain calm under extreme pressure. Their vacation to the Olympic National Park was meant to be a retreat into nature's beauty. Instead, it became a lesson in nature's hidden and horrifying brutality. What they faced was not a mindless animal. It was a tactician. I'm Mark. This is my wife, Chloe. We're both paramedics. We've seen a lot. Blood, trauma, death. You develop a certain detachment to survive. You think you're prepared for anything. You're not. It was our anniversary. We'd booked a secluded campsite near Solduc Falls. It was beautiful. The air smelled of damp earth and pine. We set up our tent, made a fire, opened a bottle of wine. It was perfect, until the first night. Around 2 a.m., we woke up to the sound of something big moving through the brush around our site. We have bears out there, so we did what you're supposed to do. We made noise. I yelled, banged a pot. Usually, a bear will huff and run off. This thing, it went silent, dead silent. And then, we heard a low, rumbling growl from the other side of the tent. It had circled us. That's not bear behavior. The smell came next. Oh God, the smell. Like a wet, moldy rug left in a swamp. It was so strong it made our eyes water. We shone our flashlight through the tent mesh, but the beam just died in the blackness. It was standing right there. We could see its shadow, massive, blocking out the trees. And we could hear it, sniffing. Long, deep sniffs at the seam of our tent fly. It was investigating us. We made a run for the car. It was maybe 30 feet away. As we unzipped the tent, it let out a sound I can only describe as a choked-off roar. A guttural, furious sound that felt like it punched me in the chest. We sprinted, dove into the Subaru, and locked the doors. We were panting, crying, thinking we were safe. That's when it showed itself. It stepped out of the tree lean into the moonlight. It was built like a power lifter, but covered in coarse, black fur. It stood on two legs, its arms too long, its shoulders hunched. Its head was wolf-like, but the eyes, they held a cold, calculating intelligence. It watched us. It knew we were trapped. It didn't charge. It approached slowly, deliberately. It placed its palms on the hood of the car and leaned in, staring right at us through the windshield. Its breath fogged the glass. Then it walked around the car, studying it. It ran a single, hooked claw along the driver's side door, scoring the paint with a sound that set our teeth on edge. The second night was worse. It came back. This time, it wasn't curious. It was determined. It started with the thumping. It would slam its whole body weight against the side of the car, rocking us violently. Thump. Then it would go quiet. Thump. From the other side. It was testing for weak points. Then it climbed onto the roof. The metal of the roof panel shrieked under its weight. We could see it denting inward. It started to jump, up and down. The whole car rocked on its suspension. The windows were going to blow. I was sure of it. I had my hand on the door handle, ready to try and make a run for it, to lead it away from Chloe. It was the most terrifying moment of my life. And then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. It let out this huff, almost like a sigh of frustration. We heard it leap off the roof, its footsteps crunching away into the woods. We didn't sleep. We just sat there, holding each other, shaking until the sun came up. When it was fully light, we got out. The car was covered in deep scratches, dents, and muddy, hand-like prints. The roof was caved in. We drove straight to the ranger station. We reported a bear attack. The ranger took one look at the claw marks on the door, 4 parallel grooves, 2 straight and 2 close together for a bear, and then he looked at us. He didn't say anything. He just nodded, slowly, and filed the report. We sold the Subaru. We don't go camping anymore. We see things in our sleep. We both know what we're saying. That wasn't a bear. It was smart. It was patient. It was playing a game with us, and we were only alive because we stopped being fun. We were too much work inside the car. I deal in facts. In medical science. I have no frame of reference for what that was. But I know, with every fiber of my being, that it was real. And I know it's still out there. A predator that displayed not just strength, but a terrifying, strategic intellect. Mark and Chloe's story chills us because it presents a creature that thinks, that assesses, and that hunts with a purpose beyond mere hunger. For our final story, we journey to a place where the veil between our world and something older is said to be at its thinnest, the Scottish Highlands, where a simple, ancestral task under a full moon unearthed a family secret more monstrous than any fairy tale. Our final account is the blood on the cairn. My grandfather's last words to me were, "Never leave the cairn untended on the night of the blood moon." I thought he was a superstitious old man, but when I saw the massive, dark-furred hand, slick with blood, reach out from that pile of stones, I understood. It wasn't a cairn. It was a cage, and I had just set it free. Story 5. The Blood on the Cairn. Our final story comes from a young woman named Fiona, who left her life in Edinburgh to settle her late grandfather's estate in the remote Scottish Highlands. She is a historian, a woman of records and documents. She believed the past was something you read about in books, not something that could physically hunt you across the heather. Her story is a chilling reminder that some family legacies are written not in ink, but in blood. My name is Fiona. I'm a historian and archivist. I deal in verifiable facts. When my grandfather passed, he left me his croft, a small, stone house on a vast, empty stretch of moorland. The only oddity in his will was a single, handwritten clause. The cairn on the northern hill must be maintained. No stone must be allowed to fall. It seemed poetic, a quaint, sentimental request. I had no idea it was a warning. The cairn was an ancient, man-high pile of stones about a mile from the house. My grandfather had tended to it his whole life. The locals in the village were reserved when I mentioned it. They'd changed the subject. I arrived in late October to sort through his things. The moon was full, and that night, it turned a deep, unsettling copper red. A blood moon. I remembered my grandfather's words, but I dismissed them. A storm was brewing, and I was cozy inside with a fire and a cup of tea. That's when I heard the first howl. It wasn't like the howls you hear in films. It was a sound of pure agony, a long, drawn-out scream of pain and rage that seemed to come from the very center of the cairn. It was followed by a sound I see and forget, the sound of stones shifting and clattering against each other. I told myself it was the wind, but the wind doesn't sound like it's trying to dig its way out of a prison. Curiosity, the historian's curse, got the better of me. I grabbed a heavy torch and my grandfather's old walking stick, and I went out into the storm. The rain was lashing down, the wind trying to push me back. As I crested the hill, I saw it. The top of the cairn had partially collapsed. Several of the larger capstones had fallen away, revealing a dark, gaping hole. And from that hole, I could hear a wet, ragged breathing. I shone my torch into the hole, and I saw movement. Something pale, something shifting in the dark. And then, a hand shot out. It was massive, larger than any man's, but it was wrong. The fingers were too long, twisted, and ended in thick, black claws. The skin wasn't skin. It was a patchwork of raw, pink flesh and coarse, dark hair, as if it were caught in some terrible transformation. And it was covered in fresh blood, washing away in the rain. I stumbled back, falling into the mud. The creature in the cairn let out another of those agonized screams, and I saw its other hand, just as monstrous, grip the edge of the hole. It was pulling itself out. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't look back. I could hear it behind me, a sound of cracking bones and tearing flesh, and a new sound, the heavy, four-footed gallop of something enormous hitting the ground and giving chase. I barely made it to the cottage. I slammed the heavy oak door and threw the bolt, my entire body shaking. Outside, the galloping stopped. Silence. Then, a slow, heavy tread on the gravel path. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It stopped outside the door. I could smell it. That same foul odor of wet beast and old blood. It sniffed at the crack under the door, a long, drawn-out sound. Then, it began to scratch. Not to break in. Just one long, slow drag of a claw down the wood, from top to bottom. A message. It knew who I was. It stayed out there until the sun began to rise. I heard it let out a low, frustrated growl, and then the sound of its footsteps retreating. When the sun was fully up, I peered through the window. There, in the mud by my doorstep, was a single, bloody paw print. It was the size of a dinner plate. I didn't stay to pack. I drove to the village and took the first train south. I've sold the croft. I never went back. My grandfather wasn't tending a memorial. He was a warden. He was keeping something in. And I, with my modern, rational mind, had let it out. I am a historian. I trust documents and evidence. The evidence is the scar on my soul and the knowledge that I am the reason something now walks the highlands that should never have been free. It was real. It is my family's shame, and it is my everlasting terror. 5 witnesses. 5 ordinary lives. forever fractured by an encounter with the extraordinary and the terrifying. From the high desert to the deep woods, from a blizzard's heart to an ancestral prison, a common thread emerges. A creature of immense power, chilling intelligence, and a nature that defies everything we think we know. These are not mere stories. They are accounts, echoes of a reality that exists just beyond the edge of our campfire's light. They remind us that the old maps, the ones marked "Here there be monsters," were never wrong. They were just premature. If you have a story of your own, a shadow that still lingers in the corners of your memory, we invite you to share it below. The night holds many secrets. Let us uncover them together. If you found yourself held by the darkness tonight, please support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and ringing the bell so you never miss a descent into the unknown. This has been Nightbound Bloodline. Thank you for listening. Until next time, sleep with one eye open.